let's kick this off. I want to talk about hooks. Hooks have a special meaning. GB, when you think about the word hooks, what do you think of?
All right. So, I mean, there's like, I just think about like, how do you catch someone? Like, how do you capture their attention, like long enough for them to go, like, what is this? Right. So, if you think about somebody scrolling through their email or their look, the first thing they might be doing in the morning or after a meeting is they're looking at their phone. Like, they have the option to keep on moving, but there's going to be something that hooks their attention where they just have to stop, right, and check it out. That to me is what a hook is.
It's a choice to stay with the message.
Well, I mean, me being super annoying, it's like it's that mechanism that drives somebody to making the choice to check it out. So like I think one of the things that I've heard about hooks, it's like, all right, maybe you're scrolling through your TikTok or an Instagram reel or something, and someone goes, stop. Right?
Mm.
You go, what? Like, so just that stop, like the fact that you stopped, like that to me is the hook. Or if it's like, hey, if you are struggling with answering this objection and you're like, hell yeah, I am. You're right. Like it's that thing that goes like, this is for me.
I think the preview is part of that, and we're going to talk about that later. But one of the things that I know to be true is that before you send a single email, you got to
Mm.
know your ICP. You got to know the people that you're going to talk to. Why are you talking to them? Why are they the person that's best for this conversation? I'm going to put something in the chat right now. This is a link to Zoom info. You can go start building a list of your ideal clients and set the parameters now. Because before you send a single email, you got to know why you're sending it and who you're sending it to. This is an extremely crucial first step in all of sales. How often is this a problem in your world, GB?
In
More
terms
often than not.
yeah. My bad. Sorry. Honestly, I saw that you were wearing a Chicago hat. And I'm like, thank you, because that's my hometown. I got distracted a little bit
Yo,
there.
we're going to be in Chicago this week. I leave tomorrow. If you're in Chicago, hit me up. We're going to throw a party on Thursday. More social than SaaS. What?
Let's go, let's go, let's go. But no, yeah, I can't say like anything but 100%. It's like, I think it's Sam. Oh, it's gonna bother me that I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now, but Sales, right?
Sam McKenna. Sam McKenna.
Thank you. But it's like she's like, show me you know me, right?
Yes.
So like if you can show someone that you've done your research, that you've taken the time to pull something out that like only they like that's only going to be relevant to them or only they have written, they're going to some people will reward you for that. Even if you don't have a solution or a platform or a service that's super helpful for them, the fact that you've taken the time to go, all right, I've looked at your profile, I've done some research on your company, I'm seeing some of the initiatives that your company is focused on and how your role might be involved in this. Someone might go, damn,
I
yeah,
show me
that
you
was
know
solid.
me. Show me you know me was the first time I heard that was from Sam McKenna, and I think it was at the Rainmaker conference in like 2016, 2017. But
Mhm.
that really resonated well with the crowd. I remember them thinking like, that's the stuff that gets my attention. And we'll talk about this more as we move forward. But like when somebody starts an email off with, James, that webinar you did yesterday was amazing.
Mhm.
Or James, that piece of content that you put out changed my life.
Yep.
Those people get my attention right away.
Right
I
away.
I will ignore other emails to open that one.
Yeah, 100%. I think Brody Hill had asked a question of like, what's the best way to find something the prospect or the org has said, like
Good question.
LinkedIn, the website, all of it, right? So one of the things that you can do is look at like self-authored content. And by the way, like a really helpful resource, go check out Beck Holland's Flip the Script check out her website and go under written content. And there's like an encyclopedia of like hooks basically, and it's just telling you like here are all the things that you, or all it's an encyclopedia of personalization and relevance. And so you can look at something that if they're writing content on LinkedIn, like for to James's point, like for me, I put a lot of content out there on LinkedIn. If someone goes, hey, I read your post yesterday, I take a lot of pride in that. So like the fact that you're taking the time to go and associate with something that I take pride in, I'm going to pay attention to it. Other things that you can look at are going to be a company's website. Of course, you can go if you're working strategic or public accounts, you can go look at their 10Ks. You can read press releases. You can check out, are they launching new products, right? You can see like what is the company page actually posting? Are they hiring for certain positions? So like if you can simply go like company name plus like strategy 2022 plus the CEO's name, and you're going to hear about all the things that are going to be top of mind for that company. Yeah, one, if I started to catch myself getting bored with what I was saying, I was like, this is too long. Like that's one thing. I think secondly as well is I if it's not conversational, it's probably not relevant. So, and then also, yeah, so I think those were really the two big things, was just like, all right, if I'm saying this out loud and it doesn't flow, it doesn't sound like a good conversation, it doesn't say like, it doesn't sound like me, then it's not going to resonate with somebody else.
Mm. Yeah. I also feel like when you read it out loud, you're asking yourself, do I talk like this? Is
Yeah.
this how I sound?
Yeah, that's the well, yeah, I feel like I've run into situations where like let's say previously I wrote like how my manager wrote, and
Mm,
then I would say it out loud, and so then there would just be this huge disconnect. And I'm a big believer in like whatever you put out energy wise is what you're going to get back energy wise. So if your energy is like, I'm just trying to sound like somebody else, like you're not going to get anybody else's attention. So if you feel comfortable, you feel confident, like you're having a good time, your prospects will too.
yeah,
But you can't do
absolutely.
that if you're not being yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. The energy has to come across in the email, even though the tone is lost. That's energy and tone are the same, but they work well together. It's important that your tone is upbeat, fun, uplifting, and then also it's always good to have that personalization that adds to the flavor of like, hey, I actually care, right?
Yeah.
I'm putting that vibe out there that I took the time and I
Yeah.
did this. I have some emails that I can share with you, Lisa, or Liz Foster. Great question there. And I think GB was digging through her inbox to look at some as well. So we'll get to that here in a second. But let's talk about some of this. Let me know if you find one you want to share right away. GB, I'm fine with that.
Right. Yeah.
Remove. I want to talk about this second to last one because I think the second to last one is a little bit controversial. We have about 20 minutes left, so I want to get to this one for sure. Remove the informative tone. I think this is interesting because we find Lavender reports back. Will state that when you lose the informative tone, you actually get a higher reply rate. But all of our leadership teaches us that we should be educating our prospects. Where do we draw the line?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah.
I
So.
I guess I'm curious about the informative tone, right?
Mm.
Like, what does that look like? What does that sound like?
To me, I think it sounds like, did you knows? I think it sounds like, hey, here's a great article that I thought would be relevant to you. And maybe the article is great. Maybe you're even pointing to that special place where they should be looking in the article to get that value. But in the end, you're still, quote, educating your prospect. You're still sharing that knowledge. But then we
Mm,
know, based on Lavender's data, that if you shorten that email and lose that informative tone, that educational tone, you actually get a higher reply rate. So where do we draw the
yeah.
line? What's a good tactic to start thinking about this way? It's definitely an interesting conversation. And feel free to jump in the chat and say your
Yeah.
piece on this, y'all.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I've seen it where like, okay, like we have a Gartner, like let's say Gartner publishes a report and they say, hey, like this percentage of this, like CXO, right?
Mm,
So it's like 73% of CMOs really care about operational execution, right? Like if I start off my email like that, I'm like, this is marketing, this is marketing spiel, right? Like
right.
it has nothing to do with me. And then also I think it's coming across like, yeah, I know operational execute, like I know that operational efficiencies are important. Ugh, ugh, get out of my face, right? But if it's something along the lines of like, hey, see that you have, or it's like, you did a little bit of research and it's like, I always like the question even of like, hey, with if your company's has this huge like change transfer, like this digital transformation process in place, knowing that like, you know, 3 out of 4 every change management projects fail, how are you setting your team up to like be one of those 4 who doesn't?
Mm.
So I'm like, I'm not beating people over the head with a bunch of information. I'm just kind of calling out like you're doing X, Y, and Z. Most of the time it's a bust. Like how are you and your team making sure that you're not part of that?
All right. So we talked about tonality and we talked about the way that we write. Happy tone, informative tone, and a tentative tone. Can you break these down for us?
Ooh, happy tone. Okay,
Yeah.
so like I feel like some people will start off an email with all doom and gloom, right? Like everything is messed up. It's
The world is
terrible.
burning.
The world is burning, right? Like or it's just really, really drab. And so I think finding ways of like, or it doesn't have to be like, oh, like smiley faces and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like how I think about it. It's just like you don't want to go like, hey, everything is messed up, everything is screwed, and nothing is ever going to be the same unless you have us. It's just more so like, hey, here's some things that I'm seeing that like that I really agree with that I think are super exciting or that I'm super interested in. Like I think there's that kind of tone to your emails. And then someone had asked this question of like within the chat of, hey, like, is it if I'm referencing an article, like, is that me being informative or not? If I'm referencing like a analyst report that anybody and everybody can read, and I'm pulling quotes from that, and I'm trying to like go, hey, like look at this stuff, and here's the information that I'm gonna have. If I'm just trying to like basically just read off a Gartner report, that to me is taking an informative tone. Versus if I'm taking an article and I'm saying, hey, like you were quoted saying X, Y, and Z, that really resonated with me. And then you ask a question about how they're trying to do something. That is just more so like bringing in relevance versus trying to inform someone of something that they can go and find out themselves, for example.
Good
I think,
breakdown.
yeah. And so I think even for the tent, like there was something there, this would have been Will's part of like the tentative tone. There's the conversation about like, all right, look, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. Like, if you come in and you're unsure about things, like it's much more like of an inquisitive, if that's a better thing versus an informative, but I can't
Yeah.
recall exactly what he said.
I think it's a confidence thing, number one,
Yeah.
but then there's this competence level too. You can't display confidence if you're not competent in what you're doing. So the two feed each other really well. But I know the two-piece part was the part that caught my attention. So for those of you that don't know Will, I think he's said this on a few of our shows in the past. He may have even tweeted about it a time or two. You can go follow him on Twitter. There's a lot of value there in following him. He puts out a lot of great content about email writing specifically. But one of the things that he does is he does the two-piece. So a valid reason for the personalization or the relevance, or both, right? You can be personalized and relevant, which is like the ultimate combo. But if I have to choose between relevance and personalization, I'm going to go relevance mostly, right? That tends to have the higher reply. And the second piece of your two-piece meal is this good flow for the message. Is it a linear thought process? There's no breaks that are hard. Great example of a break, and this is a pattern that we see a lot. Hey, I see you went to the University of Maryland, John. Anyway, the reason I'm reaching out is because I have this AI tool, right? It's broken. It's not associated. It's not affiliated with the message. It has no bearing on what your value proposition is, and therefore it is meaningless. You can personalize with useless stuff like that until the cows come home. It's probably not going to impact your open rate, your reply rate, or the number of people that close business with you. And that's the ultimate goal. Thoughts on that, GB?
I see this all the time where
Yeah.
people go, look at this really like, look at all this personalization that I put in. Honestly, what I think one of the things that can plague a team is they are more interested about in their friends and their colleagues, like cheering them on in their personalization than actually getting results. So it's
Yeah.
like, hey, like I have this really like this really witty whatever. And it's like, no, like, have you actually talked about what's going on in their business? Have you actually talked about what's going on in their role and their responsibilities? Like in a way that garners a response that drives pipeline. If the answer is no, then I'm like, great, like pat yourself on the back and like, let's do this again. So like, that's like that. I mean, that's my honest thought. And then, yeah, I mean, that's really it. I think we have to make sure that for me, if I'm reading something and it goes, hey, GB, I saw that you like matcha lattes. And then all of a sudden we're talking about something totally different. I'm like, okay, well, I'm an SDR manager. Like I appreciate the fact, but I have no idea what matcha is in your solution. And then I'm just confused.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
like, help me not be confused. I've got, like a reptile brain up here. Like make it really simple for me to figure things out.